This is gonna be like a Kakuna power ranking, I guess. So I'm not gonna be doing it the same way. I'm actually gonna try ranking these teams. And yeah, I am in this, but I'm not number one. Just don't worry about like where I put myself. I didn't give myself like too much of a buffer. So yeah, this is just how I feel about the teams. I have like the biggest pros and cons at the bottom. I have a list at the end. I kind of just I like the formatting. I saw Ian do it, but you know, so I kind of decided to take that over for this one. Um, but I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said. Obviously, there's a big difference between our opinions on the drafts. But we did note a few of the same things. I just didn't take them. I didn't think the same importance of them necessarily. And he said some things I personally don't agree with, but I think it's cool. Still, that he decided to make one. Um, you know, it's no like personal opinion. Like that came out. Basically I don't think anything of it. So the first one, first team I put, he got the last pick in the draft, and I think he's also probably the worst team. He's just abysmally slow. He doesn't have anything like above base 100. He has combustion, and he has like trick room options, I guess. So he does have like speed control. And he doesn't have like to me, he actually looks kind of weak to Toxic Stall, although he has Gliscor and Shaman, and he has Melkaloa and like the Scavalier. He still has stuff like Slowbro and Graptos and Porygon 2, and none of them like to get toxic, and he doesn't have like amazing clerics everywhere. So I think he's kind of like weak to Toxic Stall. And it doesn't look that bad, like it's just walling things, but I just don't think it's almost like Stally. I'm just not a fan of it. So it's like slow offense kind of, but it has some real like bulk in there. Um, I don't think any like I don't mind like the Z users. Um, I think the draft is just pretty bad, honestly. I really just don't like the speed. It has some breakers. I'll be realistic there. It has good walls. It's just painfully slow. Um, its removal is Zapdos, Gliscor, um, Combustion. So that's not even really like that good. You know what I mean? That's not one of its biggest flaws, but it's not really that good of removal, honestly. Then you can look like at his rockers, and he has like Kamao, Gliscor, Marowak, and that's it. And again, it's not amazing. It's actually just kind of mediocre. So I just don't see why I should rank this team any higher than last. I don't think it has a lot going for it. It's not super threatening. I mean, it has Kamao, but I just don't think it's great. Um, there's not a whole lot to say about this draft other than there's not a whole lot good about it, and there's just a whole lot against it. It has bad speed. Its hazards aren't amazing. I mean, it can be toxic stalled pretty easily. So yeah, that's just really my opinion on it. And I think it's going to have a lot of problems in the season. Yeah, and even like you could even argue that it's pretty weak to ice at like the top where it's more valuable mons are. And then when you start getting into the lower level mons and his mega, he starts getting like he patches that up. So yeah, I just don't really like this draft, and I kind of just want to move on from it. So my next one was there's another draft from the Blue Division, which you can kind of already tell that division doesn't do very well. The fact I have three up here, you can probably see that. I don't know if you can see the names yet. Um, but Ichikon 3, I don't like his draft either. And this isn't just because he lost to Robin in the first week. It's actually a bad draft. And you can kind of tell just because he has one thing over base 100 speed. He has Sylveon, and Forges was not drafted in Kakuna, so that's just a waste of points. Sylveon is an Unmon. Um, it does not deserve to be drafted over Forges in any circumstance. Forges is just better. I've mentioned that already. And unlike Robin, HCon, he actually doesn't really have speed control. I think he might have like a Tailwinder. Um, Maybe Empoleon gets it. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Thundy does not. I know Torn does. So he does not really have good speed control, which Robin actually has. I mean, he has like Robin has speed control because he can like Dragon Dance on Kamo, and you can see like he has like yes like agility Thundy, agility Empoleon. D-Dance Teatrum actually it does work. Um, but I mean, he can run agility Zapdos if you're going by that premise, or agility Gliscor. He has Trick Room. He has like flamethrowers on this. He has Kabuskin to Baton Pass. So if you look at what Colin has, it's nothing. Honestly, it's a pretty bad team. Um, and he actually drafting Tyranitar it is helpful to break bulky psychics with Pursuit to benefit Mega Medicham, but at the same time, Moonlight is weakened by the Sandstorm, and that's going to put damage on Necrozma, which is one of probably his best mons, I think. And then Zmons, I mean, they're kind of interesting, I guess, but I think Teatrum is a much better Zmon than either Rotomote or Tysplosion. So I think like Teatrum should have been fit on here. I don't understand why it wasn't. And I think the worst part is I just don't get to play this team because I think this team is really bad. I actually debated putting it 16 below Robins after looking at it for a while because it's just not good. Um, yeah, does it even have like yeah? Okay, it does, but um, I just don't think it's a good draft. Thundy's his only form of speed. Thundy's a great breaker. He has some good stuff going for it, I guess. Which Robin doesn't really have a threatening aspect of his draft, in my opinion. I just think that's not a threatening draft. It's pretty easy to prep for. Where Colin's draft is a little bit more threatening, I would say. But at the same time, I actually don't think it's much better than Robin's draft at all. It's not a good draft. There's only a few drafts that I actually thought weren't that good. So, you know, most of these drafts are pretty good. Then I got the Andrews draft, which is like more of a hyper offense draft. I thought um, it's a it's a really fast draft. First off, and Metagross has really good value, but it kind of like over relies on Metagross for a lot of its like you know just tanking hits of certain types. Like ice or stuff like that. Um, Arcanine's always there for ice and like fairy and stuff. But yeah, okay, it's a little weak to rocks, and then his removal is kind of mediocre at the same time, and he has a rocks weakness. So that's not a good thing. He has Noivern, Sneasel, Arcanine, Crobat, and yeah, that's a little bit of rocks weakness. It's very hyper offensive. Its removal is just like Crobat and Noivern, which is complete garbage. I think anyone would agree with me there. And its defensive backbone is just kind of weak. It's a relatively frail team. So yeah, off that I decided I wasn't really a fan of this draft, especially because I personally am not a fan of like Garchomp or yeah, I just don't think it's great. And yeah, I didn't really like that. And then I looked at something like what Sneasel helped by pursuit trapping, and I thought maybe like Breloom, but it wasn't a whole lot. So then I was just kind of disappointed by that. So overall, like I didn't think this draft was much special. There wasn't much special about this draft. Um, so it was just disappointing, honestly. Um, and I definitely think he could have gotten, something better than Noivern because like his speed tiers were fine without Noivern. Noivern actually just added a little bit like too much. Like he didn't need something at that point. 115 to 130 is fine. 115, 115, 130, 102 with two 100s. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So he kind of went overboard there. He didn't really need all that. And I think he could have, fit in some extra bulk on his team, and it would have been more beneficial for him, or maybe have, better hazard removal. But for his actual rocks, he's pretty solid. Maybe the Amistar, Miltank, Metagross, and Garchomp. So yeah, I thought that was pretty nice. And but again, he didn't take advantage of another Pursuit Trapper with Metagross. And I thought that he could have really made something out of that. He could have had something that didn't deal with Brokey Psychics super well, and other than Braylon, that really could abuse that, like Collins, Mega Metacham, he would have really, I think, benefited from something like Mega Metacham instead of Mega Gardevoir, and maybe had some sort of bulkier psychic in place of Braylon, and that would have been interesting, I think. Um, so I just think it's kind of a frailer draft. I don't think it's built around poorly as an offensive draft. I just think it's not super special, um, even as an offensive draft. Um, you know, and that's pretty much it. I think like webs can absolutely annoy the piss out of this team. Stuff like that are just killers. Like a wall breaker under webs can just kind of break through this draft. And that's really all I have to say about Andrew's draft. It's not my favorite. And then there's Dylan, and Dylan has a highly threatening draft. I think it has good removal, offensive team structure, and webs. I put that, and it does, but it could have more rocks. And I mentioned that this is, I'm just reading up the list here right now, but its rocks are Nidoqueen and Bronzong and Terrakion, which Terrakion's like almost a technical rocker because of how you're rarely going to run around a Sashly Terrakion. So I think he could have had more rocks on his team. And then, yeah, like it says here, I think Momoa does not fit. It just doesn't fit on the team because the team is relatively frail, honestly. It's not super bulky. It doesn't have a lot of switch-ins to things. So there's really not a lot it can do other than just wall things rather than pivot into things because you're not going to want to make a lot of switches. I don't think he's going to, unless it's on, it's away from like Torn into Momoa. But there's never a good reason for that because Torn's going to be forced out by a lot of the things Torn's going to be forced out are going to be electric types, and that's going to be annoying to Momoa to switch into. Rather, you'd want to switch in like Nidoqueen or Jolteon, and they have they can actually handle it. But I think mostly you want to switch into Nidoqueen. Honestly, I just don't think it fits very well. Maybe it's something the other mons can switch into, but I don't like its passivity in that regards. And then I think it just forces a lot of prep, which is, I guess, all right. But the draft's really weak to rocks, and it doesn't have like many ways to deal with like offensive water types. So I put that because Momoa is just not really that great at beating offensive water types. That's just the truth. They can just sub on it. Zard Mega X is like a dragon that doesn't deal with water types that well, especially offensive, because it doesn't have a water resistance. And most of them will have like a 4 times weakness to ice, even if they have a water resistance, which is, kind of kills the point. But other than Kingdra. But yeah, still, I'm not really a fan of that. As just I'm not really a fan of that. I think like something like Mega Ult is much better to deal with the water types. But then you have like your other options other than those two. For this, you have Dalmizzi, and like I got destroyed like a ninja and Weedle, and Dalmizzi doesn't really help like with that kind of water. So we just have like Jolteon. So I don't really like that. I think he's pretty weak to water types, like offensively. And I don't think his draft is very bulky in general. So I think that could be a big problem for him. And I also think, other than Zard X, which is really big to rocks, and Terrakion, which, it doesn't want to get burned, fire types can really walk on him as well, because Momoa, Terrakion, and Zard X are his answers. So, like, you could have, like, any fire type with some rock coverage can deal with, like, Zard X decently, I guess. Not any, but some. And then Terrakion, they can just carry Will-Wisp and predict the Terrakion to come in. And the Momoa is just kind of easy to play around with almost anything. So, yeah, you have that, and that's always going to be a big issue for Dylan. And I'm not really a fan of that. I don't think it's as bad as any of the drafts I mentioned before. I don't think Andrew's draft is nearly as bad as Robin or HCon 3 either. But I think Dylan and Andrew have a pretty similar scheme. I think they're kind of they're both not that great. So my next one is Matt, And his draft is a lot better than the other ones. I think as well. I think it's a decent jump. I think he builds really solidly around Megalopony because he drops Toxapex to wear things down. Weavile really shines on the team because it actually helps Toxapex a lot with Pursuit, and it helps Lopunny a lot with Pursuit by breaking down a lot of things. So I'm really a fan of Weavile on the draft. I think it does have like a big fighting weakness, but it does have reliable answers because it has like Toxapex and then it has Togekiss. But otherwise, it's kind of weak to fighting. And I mean, it has Delphox, but Delphox doesn't really want to switch in. So then it has really bad rocks. It has like Donphan and Dugtrio, and those are his only rocks. So he's going to need to bring Donphan almost every week. So I'm not a big fan of that. And then his Magnezone doesn't make sense because he doesn't really have things that just completely lose down straight up to steel types. So I'm not a fan of Magnezone on this team. I I don't know why he actually drafted it. Um, but all right. And then Z Toxapex is just stupid. I guess it has Z Haze, but I'm not a fan of it. Um, I don't think it has good Z status, really. Not really. But I think this is a solid team, I guess. It has good, decent removal, I think. If I remember correctly, it does. It has Togekiss, Donphan, Tisserina. So yeah, it has okay removal. Its speed is all right. It has Weavile, Lopunny Mega, Dexiola, Zygarde 10%. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice with the speed. It got some things going for it. I don't care about that. Pop up, yeah. So one interesting thing I just want to mention is Lopunny Mega and Linoon are kind of interesting because Linoon could potentially like pop some like maybe chillin berries or something for Mega Lopunny. I don't know. It would be interesting, how that would work. So I'm just not sure about this team. I feel like it's an all right team, honestly. I think from here on you're going to see decent teams that just have some big flaws to them. So the next one is Lil Main, and I think he has good offensive synergy with Victini, Mega Manectric, and Bulu, kind of as like a Volturn, but Bulu is like a middle ground, almost like it can deal with some of the stuff. Like Manectric isn't wanting to hard into some of the waters, so then Bulu can come and handle that. They both don't like ground, and Bulu helps that as well. But I don't like the terrain side effects. It kind of hurts Hippowdon and Flygon. But I do like how Lycanroc does actually, with the Z move, it can actually, stop terrain. But I don't think that's too significant because that's like a one-time thing and it's very situational. The speed is just stumped by ground types, which I don't like because he's not going to want to be sending in Lucia until Bulu's already got the terrain up and the situation's right. So then he has Mega Manectric and Lycanroc Dusk, which is kind of like a lack of speed in a way, and then they both lose to ground types pretty badly. So I think that's a team issue. And then he has like a significant ice weakness, like to Bulu, Lucha, Hippowdon, Drampa, and Flygon are all weak, and Victini's a resist, doesn't have recovery. Registeel's a resist, doesn't have recovery. They're both weak to ground, by the way. Vaporeon can resist it, but Vaporeon's honestly just not very good, first off, and it does get recovery, but it's not super reliable. So, yeah, I think that's definitely a problem. Then he has somewhat limited removal. Like I said, he has Lucha. Then he has like Skuntank and Flygon, which is just not the best. So if webs or something are set, it's bad for him because he has like Mega Manectric he relies on. I mean, Lycanroc does has some good priority, but yeah. The Victini, if it's scarfed, it's like it loses its scarf, and he does not have his own webs. So I thought that was a problem on this draft, one of its biggest problems. Um, and I also didn't think it was like as threatening as some of the other drafts personally. So I thought that this draft wasn't really amazing, just in general, and it didn't really abuse Hippowdon, but I don't think most drafts need to. So yeah, I just didn't really like that draft this much. So yeah, as I said, I didn't really put myself high. So I put myself at number 10. And Yeah, honestly, like my draft's good, I think, and I think it could have been ninth, but I don't really want to put it very high, because first off, I'm biased. Second off, it's actually not as good as some of the other drafts above me. But it's still a lot better than I drafted last season, and I think I can make it work personally. So I think it's just really good defensively. I mean, you can watch my draft analysis to really know what I think about my draft. And like Snorlax, Buzzhole, Steela, Latias, they work well together. Even Tentacruel, kind of works well defensively with my draft. Offensive threats work pretty well together. So yeah, I think it's well synergized that way, and it has like decent removal, decent speed, all that stuff. It's not none of it is like out of the water, and then its threats are just it has some great threats like Steela, but otherwise like I think they're actually kind of easy to overlook, which is nice. But the team in general lacks reliable recovery. Like the water type isn't really that great at defensive or offensive roles. It's just kind of like an interesting kind of can phase you, can possibly be defensive in some matchups. Maybe has an offensive presence. Water type, like it's arguable. And like my team doesn't have the best rocks in the world, and I'm aware of that. So yeah, I don't think my draft is much like special. It's just kind of a draft. It's pretty average. Um, so I mean, but I do think Steele is, pretty amazing though. So that's the biggest standout thing about my draft. I think it could have been ninth, but I decided not to put myself ninth just because that's a little bit, it could be perceived as some bias. And it was a close. I think it's a close one, anyways, between me and the ninth guy. So the ninth one I think is XRN, and yeah, I wrote a lot more here. He has a scary core at the top, and it's really reliable. Like not, I mean, he is really reliable, but not diverse because it only has Skarmy and Starmie as removal, and he has a Volcarona too, which is pairs with Kyron Black, so he's pretty. If rocks are up, he's kind of screwed. So, but otherwise, it's a nightmare to handle. You don't want to deal with a Deontay Mega, a Kyron Black, a Kieran Black, and a Volcarona at the same time. That's just terrifying. And then you have an Umbreon that also is like, scary, and it forms with Cofagrigus, it has a good switch in for fighting or bug attacks or stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that's pretty scary, and I think like Diglett kind of beats the stuff that beats Skarm, but it's kind of I don't know what to think about that. I don't really like it that much, honestly, because you're never gonna like switch into Diglett, so it's more revenging, I guess. So I'm not a super big fan of that. So, but the biggest con is that Skirmy is forced into running the fog, um, or day fog. So I'm saying it wrong, I guess. But it's forced into doing that, and that means that it's not going to be rocking because it's going to need like Brave Bird, Whirlwind, and Roost. So, but that means is that Deontay Mega, Seismitoad, Grottle and Diglett are your rockers, and that's just kind of shit. So, yeah, and the speed tiers are just they're not that great, honestly. It goes from like Volcarona and Kieran Black. Kieran Black's a little bit slower than Volcarona, to like Deontay Mega to Starmie, and that's where it ends. And that's pretty slow. It's like 100, 110, 115. So I think you can really, really, really argue that I should be above this. Um, and then like fighting types can cause it problems because Cofagrigus has no reliable recovery. And other like the other resists for fighting types aren't really that bulky. So I think I do think I actually should be above this, but I put myself below because I'm the one doing the rankings, so it's not really fair. Um, so yeah, I think it's a scary draft, but it has some pretty clear weaknesses. Um, and I think that it's pretty easy to notice them. It's a little bit like Rock and Fighting Week, and some of its lower tier picks are just kind of weird. Let's like, I mean, Toxicroak's an interesting breaking fighting type, but I don't necessarily know if it fits on the draft super well. I personally don't think it's like it's a great fit, but at the same time, I think it's nice because he has a. If he didn't have it, he would have more of a fairy weakness. So I think it's an okay mon, personally. So I think there's an argument for him to be above me as well, though. I just wanted to be fair. So my next pick was Azar, and I have him at 8. Um, which he could have been like a lot higher had he picked better speed tiers and like had a way to beat bulkier fighting types without resorting to Mesprit and wheezing and like some of the lower things. And I guess Chandelure can do it as well. If you really want, and Mandibuzz maybe, but with the he doesn't really have like a great cleric as far as I see. So yeah, Mandibuzz can just be toxic, and you can just stall that around, which I don't really like that. Um, and yeah, the speed tiers are basically garbage. And I mean, they're not like Robin or HCon 3, but they're pretty bad. Um, Otherwise, I mean, Tyranitar Mega and Keldeo is like really scary because Keldeo. I mean, Tyranitar Mega traps the psychic types for Keldeo and just wear them down really badly. Like Slowbro also. Like I didn't mention that, but that's another one. So that's a scary combo. And like Volpool and Mega Venusaur it doesn't beat really, but those things, Kartana and Chandelure both are like kind of issues because it usually going to have to click Hidden Power Fire if it wants like to beat Kartana, and if he doesn't want to beat Kartana, then then it loses to Kartana and Chandelure switch-ins. So if it clicks Hidden Power Fire though, if Chandelure comes in, it's getting Flash Fire boosted, and that's a huge issue. And then I mean, the team has so much to worry about. There's still, other than just like Kartana, Chandelure, Keldeo, and Tyranitar, there's still Zygarde. There's still Stoutland and Sand. There's still the bulkier parts of the draft, like Rotom and Mandibuzz, that can just kind of, work on you. There's a lot to prepare for, and it's scary. And there's a lot of hazard control. And the hazard setting is actually pretty solid. So I think it's a scary draft. And if you're a team like that doesn't have good speed tiers, I think more so. I think it was HCon 3's draft would be even worse against this because I think Robin has a couple at 100, but HCon 3 doesn't. So yeah, HCon 3 would have like 3 mons. So I think that would be really terrifying as a draft for him to play. Um, so yeah, but I actually haven't seen the matchup, but I'm just saying that off the fact that, well, honestly, Azar doesn't have a lot of ways to break fighting types, and he has Mega Medicham. And honestly, his switch-ins to Mega Medicham are, you could kind of argue they're pretty bad. I would argue that personally. Because he didn't draft a good Psychic type, and I think he should have. So yeah, that's just my opinion on his draft. It could have been number 2, number 1, somewhere around there, but it wasn't. Now, I mean, honestly, like, I didn't really want to see a really good psychic type on this draft, though. I just wanted to see like a tier 3, maybe. Um, Maybe Rotom Wash could have been replaced. I guess he did need a good water answer if he didn't have Rotom Wash, but he could have tried to get like Rotom maybe. Whatever. So then there's Juiced. He builds around Mega Gale. Well, and he has like Bisharp to Sheet Trap for it because it also has problems with like bulky psychic types and stuff. And yeah, he has a lot of ways to wear down teams. Other than the fact that he has pretty shitty hazards, really kind of shitty removal, and he's a little bit ice weak. But he has all right speed tiers, and he's got really scary some really scary threats on his team. But he won't be able to fit in hazards very much, hazard control very much, etc. And I think it's just a little bit over reliant on Mega Gale to be like fast and clean up teams that way, because I mean it doesn't really have like good scarfers, I would say, other than maybe Salazzle or like maybe Bisharp could be a good and Zergatry obviously, but it's I don't think it's as threatening that way. And Zerkachi definitely can be played around easier if it is a Scarfer, because like let's say you go into a ground type and it uses Energy Ball, then you might be able to get him on pretty easily. That can set up on one of Zerkachi's Energy Balls and just kind of dominate this team, because most of its Scarfers don't really have options. Because he doesn't have a lot of options for more Scarfers, and he doesn't have a lot of priority. So then, if you just set up on Zerkachi's Energy Ball, you're in a really good position. So I think that's kind of an issue for this draft. Is it's easy to set up on it and just kind of dominate. And I didn't really mention that in the cons, but I think it is a little bit easy to set up on if it runs a Scarfer, and that's an issue. So the next draft I have is Nodder, and I like this draft. I think it synergizes as well. I think it's good offensively and defensively. My biggest problem is Unmontop, and it's just a trash mon. Honestly, that's the only reason. Like that's the biggest problem. It's not weak enough to hazards to warrant it. You could have gotten something better, maybe a ghost type to spin block. Because he already has a Gengar, but that's not like, well, that's a scary switch right there. And he could just get some hazards up, have them defog, or yeah, defog. Whatever. I'm told that I'm supposed to put the emphasis on D and not fog, but I don't care. And I think after the draft of Yuxi, I was told like Niner said that he thought the draft was worse after Yuxi. I think it's a little bit weaker, but I would argue a lot of it's just like budgeting, and the speed has like the speed is another thing that really holds it back from being like a really much higher draft, which because it goes 95 to 110 to 130, and I think that's a really big jump that I can't really ignore. And then my next one would be heading into the top five. I think Bill rounds out the top five. I think it seems like a really Bill draft. It reminds me of the draft he drafted last season a little bit. Um, it's pretty similar. I think he drafted Nape and Kruk last season. I'm not sure if he drafted Kuhn, but he might have. The city he might have drafted that even. But it seems like something Bill would draft. It has solid offensive synergy, like I said, removal, hazards, speed, and priority options. But its removal. Let's talk about that because I didn't mention that there for some reason. He's Swallow, Decidueye, Silvally, and Altaria. So those are all good. Except none of them are like superb other than Decidueye, I would say. So maybe it won't be as good as I don't know if it will be that good actually, but he has to rely a lot on Jirachi as like one of the only favorites because of like. But the only reason that's one of the only and not the only because of Silvally. Something like Mimikyu could be scary because of that, which I wrote obviously because I'm just reading up notes. As I've already kind of ranked. Decidueye and Mega Altaria are the team's only fighting answers. So like Mega Altaria switching into Stealth Rocks is a problem, and then like another thing is, it will be 4 times a week on a switch in if it's not Mega Evolved, so that's always gonna be an issue. Decidueye is a little bit better at this, but it's still relying it on as the only answer is like kind of iffy, and then Altaria is more like your cleric. Well, you also have Licky Licky, but that's not like a fighting answer, so you might want to rely a little bit on Silvally, I guess. And a lot of the primary bulk on the draft lacks reliable recovery, a lot like mine. And I think it's a little bit more threatening than mine in a sense. Other than I have like Cell Steel, I think it's more clearly threatening. There's more obvious threats. And I think like Suicune, Jirachi needs 2 move slots to have recovery, really. And there's still Decidueye has reliable recovery. Silvally does not. Electros does not. Licky needs 2 move slots to have reliable recovery, and that's there's a lot that doesn't have it, and that's just kind of iffy. My fourth is Max, because he has good hazards and removal. And he has like huge threats. If rocks aren't on the field, he has Pinsir Mega and Talonflame, and he has like so much versatility. You can run like 20 sets on a lot of these mons, but he doesn't really type. Like the typings don't work too well together. Like he doesn't have a Ghost Resist. He has an Ice weakness, and like the speed, all the speed on the draft struggles with rocks except for Whimsicott, and he's gonna have to bring good removal every week. So I think this is like one of the better drafts for sure. But like I already said, like I just don't think it's. Mm. Magneton's kind of helpful. Also, I want to mention for Pinsir, and potentially like Mew or other stuff. But honestly, I could have seen a better fit than Magneton on the draft. I'm not sure if it's the best fit, but it works out. I think so. Yeah, I definitely think it's one of the more threatening drafts in the league. Um, and oddly enough, I think one of the drafts later on is a lot less threatening. In fact, it's probably one of the least threatening drafts, but it's still probably one of the best drafts. Um, so my next one is Paladin, and yeah, okay. I think it's well synergized like offensively, and I think Zorak works really well with like Dragalge, Virizion, even like Azoth, or Azoth. Um, and I think it has like good priority, good speed. It's pretty versatile. You can run a lot of sets. It's definitely an interesting draft. Um, but I think the removal is pretty bad, and it pairs with the Dragonite not having good removal, Rotom Heat, which is part of your removal actually. The removal is only Rotom Heat, Arrow, and Rotom Heat, Arrow, Scissor, and Dragonite, which is just eh. Its hazard setting though is Clefable, uh, Azov, Swampert, Aeromega, and Dragati for Toxic Spike. So he's pretty good at hazards. He doesn't like water types though. They can just run Scald and Ice Beam and pretty much hit everything pretty hard. And so yeah, you know I think it's an alright draft. I think it's pretty well built. But I think it's a little bit hazard weak. That's all really. And then water types. It doesn't really like them, to be honest. It just doesn't really, especially just Rotom Heat as an electric type definitely brings that, makes that more of a problem. I guess Clefable can kind of tank like Scalds and Ice Beams from not super powerful water types, but then if you have something like Primarina, you're in a little bit of a situation where you might have a little bit of a problem. And yeah, another thing is like Fairy and Water is also kind of an issue for coverage. So Primarina and like a zoo, another thing that could give you an issue. Um, I'm not really, I'm not really like hating on this draft. I'm just nitpicking a little bit, um, because these few drafts, like they're all really good. I'd say Nodder has the biggest problem because the speed tiers are really bad. In my opinion, I think it's good if you just have them on like 110 and maybe like above a 120, but I think you need at least a base 100. Um, just to make that work. So then my next pick is John. So you know who my number one is. And John he is a really, really solid draft. It's really well built. Synergy is perfect. On paper, there's really no problem. It has rockers, great removals, great defensive options, great speed, and pretty much everything that you can ask for. You name it, it has it. Like for options, and I think it's like somewhat versatile on the top. It can be overlooked in prep, and I don't think the typings are really a problem for this draft either. I think like typing wise, it is pretty well covered. But the biggest problem is I think it doesn't just have that great of value. Like Tran, Amoonguss, Mega Kangaskhan, Latios. I just don't think the draft has the best value in the world, and it doesn't look as just like threatening as some of the other drafts we've seen. But it's like a really well built draft, and I thought um, it's definitely solid, and it definitely deserves a higher spot on this list, just because it has so much that it can do. It works so well together, but it's not necessarily. I'm gonna just if you screw up here, I'm just gonna destroy you draft. I don't think so. So my number one is Damos. Um, and I think people should have seen this coming, honestly, because This is some miracle work, honestly. It's just so hard to prep for this team. Just the Mons in general. You have Lando T, Scissor Mega, Hydreigon, Nihilego, Cobalion, Reuniclus, Doug Trio, and Weather that you have to deal with. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And then you have to consider that like Hydreigon and Mega Scissor do super well with each other because like Hydreigon can take fire hits, and fire types can't run like hidden power fairy. There's no such thing. So then yeah, you have a problem there too, and that's an issue. So then you also have Hydreigon, which can go right into Scissor Mega on almost all the types it's weak to, especially Fairy, which is his primary weakness, and then just pop them. Either that or they can U-turn, predicting a switch, and then make momentum. So that's brutally hard to deal with on its own. And then you take Scissor Mega and you pair it with Land of T, and now you have something that can kind of switch into physical fires that Hydreigon can more so have issues with because of stuff like Infernape that have close combat. But Land of T does not have issues with physical fires. It doesn't have recovery, but that's fine. And it's just a really hard mon on itself to prep with and meant to prep against. And they both have U-turn and they can pivot around. So does Hydreigon, which can also pivot around. So that makes it really, really hard. And then Land of T also has its weaknesses to ice and water. So in particular, it can switch into Scissor Mega on the ice, and on water, it can pretty much go into Hydreigon, but it also has the option of going into Helios directly as a electric type and just absorbing hits. So that is absolutely amazing. And then you have Nihilego and Dugtrio, which also pair fantastically together because Nihilego, it has problems against steel types, but it also has some problem against ground types, but it does have Grass Knot and Leak. So that is an advantage, and it has a little bit of a problem against, I would say, against fighting types, which might be the biggest issue on the draft. But he still has Reuniclus and like Jellicent, and he definitely has his answers. Vitcherbell, some physical bulk, and like Torkoal. Lando T can definitely deal with him. I think his biggest issue is probably fighting types, but I don't even think that's like. I didn't even put that because I didn't even think about that at the time. But Nihilego and Dugtrio pair really well together because they beat up the steel. Dugtrio can beat the steel types for Nihilego to do very well and so forth. So like there's still stuff that does really well together that I haven't even mentioned. Like Cobalion can do really well for a lot of these things. It can break certain types like steel for Nihilego as well. It does not break ground, which the draft you could argue also has a little bit of an issue with ground, but I don't think it really does, personally, because Land of T is just a great switch into it. Scissor Mega takes away like so much of a ground's potential. It just has a lot, and the removal's still really solid. It has Land of T, Scissor Mega, Hydreigon, Torkoal, and that's actually really solid still. And then he has a lot of options to set rock still. He has Land of T, Nihilego, Cobalion, Torkoal, and Dugtrio. That's 5 rockers right there, and that's that's dangerous. And he actually has really good speed tiers as well. So then you have good Scarfers too, by the way, and priority with Scissor Mega, and you also have Sucker Punch Victor Bell. And Sucker Punch Dugtrio as well. So then you have Nihilego at 103, 108 on Cobalion, 109 on Helios, and 120 on Dugtrio. So that's solid. So when it comes like how it can do defensively, it looks really solid as well. It has defensive options. Then I think Reuniclus can kind of just carry in a way. And if we want to knock off that, you have Cobalion right in the back, so that can just absorb knockoffs. And that's another thing that does really well together. And Cobalion's weaknesses are for a large part covered by Reuniclus, like fighting weakness, but like fire weakness as well. So you still have a lot of answers for fire, I think, and you can just go into Torkoal, I guess, for a lot of them too. And then other than ground, so there is a little bit of defensive problems, but it's not very significant whatsoever. But the draft is also extremely versatile. Like there's like a million line of T sets. There's a ton of things you can do with Scissor Mega. A ton of things you can do with Hydreigon, although it's not a Z user. Nihilego is pretty versatile. It can be like a hazard setter, a cleaner with Scarf. It can be a Life Orb or like Specs or something. Cobalion's very, very versatile. You can use it as like a lead, taunt, like with some offense. You can have it like physical or special. You can do a lot with it. yeah, just they have arena class has a ton of sets. This is just a lot. This is too much to handle, I think, for most people. And you're probably not going to prep for one of the things that he could bring like perfectly. So I think you can judge it on the order, like pretty like it's an iffy order. He has Vitribel a little bit early. You could argue, but the outcome is nothing short of amazing. So like you can just you can just ignore that. Honestly, it's just that good. And I'm just gonna show you guys the final rankings. Like the other, yeah, okay. So I put 4 for H Con. Okay, my bad. So yeah, and that's my Kakuna ranking. I hope that's accurate. If you have any like disagreements, feel free to talk to me about them. I'm willing to listen, like because I'm not super sure about how I feel about like these, but I think they're relatively accurate. Um, but if you can come to me with a good argument on why your team should be higher or why another team should be lower or something like that, I mean, I'm willing to hear it because there's no reason for me not to. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you have your own opinion on like who's number one and it's not Damos, you could feel free to comment that in the chat. Just I'm always interested to hear backup and or follow up opinions. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Because I put a little bit more effort into it as I had to make a document. So I think it might be shorter, but I actually had to kind of like organize all this and yeah. But I probably didn't go in as in depth into some of the teams as I could have. So I also don't know if it's going to be as accurate, but yeah, I think it's fairly accurate, and I'd like to end this video just saying peace out. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye.